Hello everyone, hope you are all doing well, and today we're back looking at the Dutch naval tech tree. Now that we're on to rank 3, we're starting to get into some of the larger vessels that we'll see in this tech tree. Of course, rank 3 normally, when we look at War Thunder, is dominated by destroyers, and that's basically the same thing here, apart from we have a few different types of ships as well. So starting on the left hand side that we can see here, we're going to be talking about the Dang. So let's get started, soldier. Let us know about that machine.
So this is actually a pre-1900s vehicle. It would probably go a bit down in BR, but it would still kind of be the same way. So it was basically a bit of a multi-purpose ship. It was a bit of a mine layer, it was a bit of a torpedo repair ship, and a bit of a sort of motor torpedo boat slash seaplane depot ship. So it can basically do all of it. And it was actually scuttled in 1942. So this ship has a pretty ridiculous service life of a bit more than 40 years, like more than 45 actually. But it does have armament, obviously. It has two 10.5 centimeters, one 75 millimeter, two 37 millimeters, 450 cals. And before it was converted to a mine layer, it had even more weaponry. It had 3 single 4.7-inch guns. We haven't really specified which role this one fulfills in the tree, but my guess is that it's the original variant. It also goes like 30 knots, so the speed will definitely be the weak side of this. But on the other hand, the weaponry is pretty alright. Plus, it also has a pretty interesting history, being used in various roles and for a really long time.
Yeah, I definitely think 30 knots is, it's respectable. It may struggle on some of these larger maps which are coming out, but I still think overall it'll be fine. The only thing is, will it get whizzed around by some of the lower tier PT boats? The next vehicle that we're having a look at is the Willem van Zaan, which is probably how you pronounce it. Tell us about this vehicle, Cacti. How does this vehicle fit into this Dutch tech tree?
Now, this ship is actually pretty interesting. The Willem van der Zaan is the last mine layer that was built for the Royal Netherlands Navy before the Germans invaded. Like this ship was originally laid down only days before the Germans invaded. So at the time, this ship was very modern, and also the designers of the ship actually tried to do everything they could to make this vehicle top-notch. So the weaponry is 220mm guns. Those are 2 single mounts. It has 4 40mm Bofors, 2 twin mounts, and it has 4 50 cals. Now this does not sound super impressive when you compare it to a destroyer, but keep in mind this is more of a mine layer or a sloop, I guess. So these were supposed to patrol the rivers and things like that. And it having these Bofors is very powerful at the time. Also, the Bofors were later removed and replaced with a single quad 40mm pom-pom mount. So in game, we could maybe see both those variants somehow. Maybe one of them could be an event, or I don't know. But in the tech tree, I would say the 4 standard Bofors one is better. But in the end, I think this is a really nice ship because it's very much top-notch. And it's technically a sloop. It's an interesting class, if you ask me. Top speed, again, not too great. It's 15.5 knots. But that's kind of what we get with the Dutch. For some reason, we seem, in the homeland, in the Netherlands, we relied a lot on sloops or mine layers. And in the East Indies, we had more things like destroyers and cruisers.
Yeah, so it shows a kind of a different battle plan, depending on where in the world we're fighting, which of course makes, a lot of sense. Next, we're going to couple 2 vehicles together, these 2 K-class sloops, and I'll leave the names to soldiers, since of course they are definitely interesting when it comes to at least how I pronounce them. So let us know about these machines, soldier. How do these ones fit in?
So this is the only yellow ship we currently have in the tree, the Cannoneer boat 1938. So basically we have this ship in game. you could technically say. So we have the K2 in the German tree, which was this ship captured and then basically converted into what the Germans wanted with it. But obviously the Dutch had a different design idea with it, and so you get some different armaments. So the guns are somewhat similar. The Dutch wanted 4 120 millimeters, 4 40 millimeter Bofors guns in like 2 double mounts, and 4 50 cals, while the Germans gave it some bigger guns. So this would be the Dutch model, so to speak, the Dutch design for it. And it got like 19 knots. So it is a different vessel. It's just technically the same boat. The next ship, the Van Speyk, is basically one of the ships of that same class that was captured by the Germans. I mean, it was converted to what they wanted with it, and then after the war, they found it or captured it, and they gave it back to us. So this ship was from the Germans given back to the Dutch. I'm not sure about the exact armament though of it, because since it was in German service, it could maybe actually carry the German weaponry it had. But maybe ZiePeregrine knows this, but that would be a thing to sort of research to actually find more info on.
From what I've heard, the Van Speyk is technically the K3, which is not the one we have in game. We have the K2, but armaments-wise, it should be exactly the same.
Makes sense overall for this K-class sloop, and there's definitely at least, even though it wouldn't be the best outcome for the Dutch, at the end of the day, if as many ships can make it into different nations as possible, kind of like with the Roycat, which obviously has been announced in a devlog for the South Africans, at least it'll give a little piece of history to those people who want to see it. The next vehicle to have a look at is the first premium of rank 3, and it's the Holland. So, aptly named for this tree. Let us know about this vehicle, Cacti. Why also did you decide this was going to be the premium one?
So the Holland class destroyers are the first major naval vessels that we built after the war. These were built in the 1950s. Now the reason why this one is a premium, because we have another one that is very close to it, the Friesland class. We will get to this in the end of this video. But the Holland is, well, you could say it came before, so it's slightly different. But I should point out that the battle rating it has right now in the tech tree is not really correct, and it's going to be bumped up to 4.3, maybe even 4.7. Because when we look at the armaments, it has 4 Bofors 120mm guns, that is 2 in the twin mount, 1 40mm Bofors as AA, and then some submarine mortars and depth charges. Now this does not sound like 4.3, 4.7 material, but if we look at the main armaments, things change. So these twin Bofors guns can fire 45 rounds a minute. That is a reload rate of 1.3 seconds. So these are very much modern destroyers that will most likely break the game if they're at 4.0. So they're going to be moved up, but the whole reason why this one is a premium is this one differs slightly in AA armaments to the Friesland, which is in the main tech tree. So it's sort of like a trade away. You get slightly worse AA with the Holland class, and that's mainly why it's a premium.
Nice. It definitely, it has some interesting stuff, which kind of reminds me of that new SAV in a way, how it has some nice little gimmicks that will definitely bring people towards it. So for me, another great pick. The next one is another name I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce. I'll just start off saying it's the Johan, at least to me. What is this one about, Soldier? Is this actually seen as a destroyer, or is this another one of those kind of sloop ideas?
So this is actually the second ship of that name in this tree, the other one being a premium. But it just pretty much, the Dutch really like to name their ships like the same. So you have a lot of ships with the exact same name. But we tried to prevent that, obviously, in the tree to avoid confusion. But in this case, we kind of couldn't. So the reason kind of for that is because this ship is a one-off. Like it's not necessarily even a class because there's only one ship in it. So yeah, this is a sloop, basically an improvement upon the Sumba, which we soon get to. But it has some unique differences to it. So this one has 3 150mm guns, two 40mm Bofors guns, 4 50 cals in dual mounts, and 4 30 cals. And it could carry 1 aircraft. Something that the Dutch, for some reason, really liked was to carry aircraft on destroyers and sloops, like small boats. That's kind of unique. Maybe it could. Obviously, we don't have that in game right now. You have a lot of ships that carry seaplanes, but they don't fulfill any purpose. But maybe in the future we'll get some kind of scouting role or something like that, where you can take out that plane for maybe a limited time and use it. But perhaps that's obviously all speculation. And it goes 15 knots, which isn't obviously that fast, but the armament is pretty great, so it kind of makes up for that.
Well, that's good. You know, it's got to have at least some strong areas and then some weak ones to be able to kind of balance it out. Not everything can be great at everything. There always has to be some form of weakness, and it's nice to see that that is found in that machine. The next one we're going to couple together because they're both Flores class sloops. So we have the Somber and also the Flores. So go ahead, Cacti, tell us about these two machines.
These two machines actually have a pretty interesting history, but before I'll get into that, I think I'll cover the vehicle separate first. So the Sumba is of course a Flores class sloop, and again a sloop, we Dutch really like them. But the armaments on these sloops are pretty decent actually. The main armament is 3 5.9-inch guns. These are 150mm guns. A single 75mm guns and 4 50 cals. But of course, during World War II, this was not really the best, so additional weaponry was added. And for the Sumba, that is 6 additional 20mm order guns. Top speed, well, again, it's a sloop, so 15 knots, not too great. But the Sumba, yeah, it's not the best. AA armaments is quite alright with the 620mm. But to be honest, the Flores is really where it's at. When we look at the Flores, it has the same main armaments, that being the 3 150s and the 4 50 cals. But the 75 that was standard on there was removed, and in its place, a twin Bofors mount was added. But this is not where it ended, of course. We Dutch really like to just add random stuff to it. Additionally, with the 40mm, we also added a 40mm pom-pom, just a single mount. Then we had 4 20mm on it, and of course the 4 50 cals like I previously mentioned. And we had 8 30 caliber Browning machine guns, and these were in 2 quad mounts. But what makes this very interesting and weird is these quad mounts are Bolton-Paul Defiant turrets. So if you don't know what this aircraft is, look it up. It is a turret fighter aircraft, which only has a turret on it with the machine guns. So it's a quad-mounted 30 cal turret on a boat, or on like a heavy sloop, which is really odd. I don't know where we got those turrets from, but hey, alright, it's interesting. So the Flores is like a big step up from the Summa when it comes to secondary armaments. It'll really tear up aircraft, if you ask me. Now, if we get to the history part of things, I'll keep it short. So the Flores class sloops were used in the Netherlands East Indies, but when the World War II broke out, the Flores was sent back to Europe, and the Summa would stay in the Dutch East Indies. Now, the Flores survived the occupation of the Netherlands and later joined the UK to basically guard convoys and help bombard certain beach lines and stuff like that. Eventually, the Flores was sent back to the Dutch East Indies and reunited with her other ship of the same class. And what's interesting, those two together became very successful, and they got the nickname the Terrible Twins. Like, for some reason, they did very well in defending the homeland and just taking out enemy targets. So in the end, in this tech tree, I think both of these ships are, well, kind of hidden gems. Not everybody will play them, of course, but they are very, very decent.
Good. Great to hear about those machines. Hopefully nobody does overlook them. Our next double-barreled entry is the Van Ghent and also the Van Galen. So what are these vehicles about? Soldier, when it looks like it, at least for me, these look at least slightly different to others, and also kind of like a step up when we look at the general size of the machines.
Yeah, so these two ships are both Admiralen class destroyers. I think this is one of the first actual destroyers you can meet in the tree. Maybe the G13 you could consider a destroyer, but it's more of a torpedo boat. The interesting thing about this class is that they were laid down in like two series, so to speak. So you have the first series basically and the second series, and they aren't the exact same. So we basically have one of each, so to speak. The Van Ghent is armed with four 120mm Siderius guns, and Siderius is actually a Dutch weapon manufacturer. I'm not sure if it's actually a complete unique design from them, or maybe it's a sort of license-built gun from a different nation. It has two 75mm for 12.7s, and it carries two triple mount or torpedo launchers, basically, of 533mm. And the torpedo itself it carries is actually a whitehead type, which is a pretty interesting thing to read about. And it goes 34 knots, so it actually goes pretty fast. Because obviously the sloops go pretty slow, but then you get this thing that goes like twice as fast. So that would be probably pretty noticeable in the game. The Van Galen, which is again the slightly different variant of it, carries still the same main weaponry. It still carries the four 120s, the 75, but it carries four 40mm and four 12.7s, and still goes 34 knots. So basically, look at it from a perspective that it is different armament, so to speak, and also this both can carry float planes. Destroyers of Dutch origin had that as a sort of gimmick. You don't really see it with a lot of destroyers from other countries actually. So maybe it could be a unique mechanic later on in the game if we get operatable float planes. But assuming we don't, then these are at least solid looking destroyers.
Yeah, hopefully one day we do get some form of float plane mechanic, whether it is, from a scouting point of view or whether it is from some other. And seeing them, be available on these destroyers as well always means that going towards that goal is a little bit easier. The next vehicle is another, what looks like destroyer, known as, the Isaac Sweers, is probably how you say that. Anyway, Cacti, let us know about this vehicle and also probably how you properly pronounce it.
So how you pronounce this is the Isaac? Yeah, I think that's right. The Isaac Sweers. And it's a Gerard Kalenbrug class. Oh, Kalenburg, sorry. It's confusing having to switch from Dutch to English all the time. But this boat, the class itself actually is an improvement of the previous Admiralen class. When we look at weaponry, it's a bit interesting because this is one specific ship of its own, of course, the Isaac Sweers. But this ship actually, while it was under construction, was also captured by the Germans. And, Germans being Germans, they like to put their own weaponry on it. But the one we have in the tech tree is not the German one. We actually just have our standard Dutch one. This one will be armed with 602mm guns, 4 40mm Bofors, and 4 20mm Oerlikons, and of course 8 torpedo tubes, also being 533mm. So this one being at the end of the line, or the end of this tech tree, is mainly, yes, the guns are smaller, but they do make it up for it in fire rate. I don't know the exact reload rate of them. But yeah, in the end, having those 6 main guns and 40mm Bofors to back you up, it's looking like a pretty decent destroyer. When we look at top speed, also very fast, 37.5 knots. So this ship will not let you down.
Well, that's good, especially with a lot of competition of 4.3 for many different destroyers. It's definitely going to, meet a lot of stiff stuff, and especially, the fact that top tier, at least right now, being 5.7, 4.3 is kind of that unfortunate BR which gets into all those 5.3s, which are trying to vie for that top tier spot. So, hopefully it can hold its own. The next vehicle is a British-Dutch vehicle, and it's one of the N-class destroyers, which, is already in the game. On top of this as well, it is part of the pre-order bundle, or at least, the proposed pre-order bundle, I should say, from this tech tree. Let us know about this one, Soldier, and also why, in your opinion, it should be part of a pre-order bundle.
So this would be the destroyer pre-order bundle. Something you don't really want to see with bundles and stuff is vehicles that are like super likable and people like something that is really unique and should be something that everybody can enjoy. So this makes more sense as sort of pre-order bundle because you can get a similar experience from the British boat. So this is an N-class destroyer. Obviously, it's the Cherkidis. It was actually the HMS Nonpareil, if I pronounced that correctly, and it was basically used in Dutch service in some kind of DD or destroyer flotillas until basically after the war. It actually survived it, and then it got sold to Indonesia actually as the Gajah Mada, and that might ring a bell for some people because that ship is actually in World Warships in the Pan-Asian destroyer line. So maybe for that reason, for people that have played that game, this vehicle might ring a bell and might make it actually a really cool ship to have.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely one of those things where we don't really like to talk about it too much, in War Thunder and World of Tanks and World of Warships, but there is, of course, a large crossover of individuals who play either game. So adding to that, idea, throwing in some kind of, I suppose, little prizes from that game into War Thunder isn't a terrible idea to try and coax in a slightly different player base or give other people something that they see familiar. The last vehicle that is in rank 3 that we're going to talk about is the vehicle that you see right here, the Friesland, I'm guessing. Once again, if I'm wrong, please correct me, Cacti, and also let us know about this machine.
So the Friesland, I touched upon this very briefly when I talked about the premium Holland class, but the Friesland class is actually a improved Holland. It is slightly bigger and it has more powerful machinery on board. So like I said with the Holland class, this ship is gonna need a major battle rating increase, because this one still carries the same 4 120mm Bofors guns that have a reload rate of 45 rounds per minute. Or that's a reload rate of 1.3 seconds. But unlike the Holland class, this one has slightly more AA weaponry. It has 6 single 40mm Bofors, but it still has the 2 quad submarine mortars and the 2 depth charge racks. But the main thing, as you can see, the Friesland is the last ship you get before you head over to rank 4. This is going to be one of those top-notch, really good ships. And also, like Sol just said with the previous ship, this ship, the Friesland, is actually also in World of Warships. So if you want to play it out, I've never played World of Warships before, so I don't know if you can actually play this vehicle very easily or if it's some sort of a special event thing, but it is in the game. And from what I've heard, it's also very, very good, mainly because of the reload rate.
Yeah, the reload rates definitely would make it. And since that is the end of the rank 3, I think there is actually a lot of nice offerings here when it comes to the general tech tree. Another thing to also mention is the fact that since, we're getting bigger and bigger and bigger ships, rank 3 is becoming one of those kind of gateway areas for a lot of people to get into them. So it's very important when it comes to naval for it to be strong. And overall, this is looking very strong for the Dutch as well as the rest of the tech tree. Next time we'll be having a look at rank 4. We which gets into the cruisers that are on offer for the Dutch. And well, I hope you enjoy that video when it's out, and I hope you have enjoyed this video too. Have a wonderful day. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, J. Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyens Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trashcan for supporting the channel.